Hello, this is Steve Gillmor, and this is the day that the world changed. Thanks for joining us for the Gillmor Gang. We've got probably a short show today because Robert Scoble, he's had a little bit of a nap, but he was pretty much up all night as usual. Welcome, Robert.
Hey, it is the day that the world changed. I just said it's underhyped after playing with this. I think most of the world hasn't even gotten what this is yet. In fact, I was talking to tons of software developers.
Okay, time.
Go.
Yeah, let's get everybody introduced first. Joining us on the phone from New York, the editor-in-chief of, what's that? The editor-in-chief of CBS News Online, Dan Farber. Welcome, Dan.
Thank you, Steve. And I was at the Fifth Avenue store as it opened to see the great pilgrimage into the temple of Steve Jobs.
And was Harry Smith there to a reprise of his colonoscopy?
He was not, but...
I'm glad to hear that. Letterman seems to keep putting a picture of the colonoscopy on the screen, so I've seen a lot more of it than I wanted to. But we'll hear about your early show exploits today in just a second. Also joining us from New York on video is Edo Segal. Can you hear us, Edo?
Yes, I can hear you fine. Great to be here.
That helps to not be muted. Great, thank you. So that was your echo. If you have any kind of earphones, you could slap them on. So I want to go back to Scoble. You were saying?
I'm just saying that I think the iPad is greatly underhyped after getting it, after playing with it, and it's not just me. I'm arguing with people on Twitter right now about that. But I don't think anybody really has a clue what this thing is going to mean long term, including the software developers. I interviewed dozens of iPad developers, from people who work at Google who are building iPad apps, to Evernote, to SkyGrid, which is one of the featured apps, and on and on. And none of them have seen their software on the device until this morning. And they're all now probably furiously trying to rethink what it means to actually have it in your hand. And having it in your hand is dramatically different than playing with an emulator online. This already, I can tell I'm going to use this a lot more than I was expecting.
Dan Farber, what was the reaction like in New York?
I think the reaction was very similar. From the people were lined up. Many people stayed overnight. The store opened at 9 a.m. and there were lots of blue shirts and lots of security as they let people trickle in. But by about 10 o'clock, it was pretty cleared out. So, but there are 4 stores in New York. But I think in general, the reaction was that this is the first wave, and the first wave are the enthusiasts who are big fans and see the promise. I was somewhat disappointed, and related to what Robert was saying, is that I went into the store and I wanted to look at a bunch of applications. And what I saw mostly were just iPhone applications or applications that were blown up to fit on the screen. But I didn't see the new kinds of applications that will kind of transform the way we consume media and the way we create media. I understand that Time Magazine and a few others look pretty cool, Reuters. But I think, as Robert was saying, it's really up to the software development community to create new kinds of user experiences that really take advantage of what started with the iPhone and has now evolved into this more tablet-like device.
So, Edo Segal, you've just released an iPad app, correct?
Yes, it was kind of surreal having developed software for most of my life to develop it without having the platform. Specifically because this particular one, I have a few initiatives in my portfolio companies around the iPad. This one is a game company, so it's actually a game, so that's even more surreal to develop a game without having the actual device, because so much of the art of making a game is in the nuance, and wasn't available to us.
When you refer to the app, I'm seeing a black screen. Is that one of those new black games?
Oh no, the app itself that we released is a game. I can, but generally, I've now had it since the morning, and I concur with what Robert is saying. I would go even further. I would say that what's the date today? It's the 3rd of April. It's probably the date that the laptop died, and if it didn't die today, but it's kind of a Walking Dead form factor. I think from this point moving forward, I can't see how. Like if I look at my 5-year-old, I can't see him ever having a laptop when he's a grown-up, other than for very specialized type of fields. So it's very clear to me that at this point, after using it, that this is the form factor that's going to win. And I think much in the same way that when the iPhone came out and we were BlackBerry users, we were very much confused and not certain that the touchscreen interface will work for typing, etc. But the additional value was so great that we kind of got along with it. I think it's the same case for the core use case of a laptop, that it's going to be this type of surface computing. And Apple has managed to align all the right components to kind of reinvent through the back door in a way what computing is about, with a very clean kernel compared to the competitors. So I think it's really exciting that way.
Robert, have you run into the? I mean, what's your take on the lack of ability to not multitask so much as be able to integrate a stream of micro messages into the unit? It seems to me to be a problematic aspect of the current software design, that you can't have an alert mechanism that tells you about incoming information.
I haven't hit that, but to tell you the truth, I turn off as much of the notifications on my iPod as possible, so why would I want those here? I do have a killer app. I saw SkyGrid's CEO in line yesterday, and that, it shows you what's hot and new right there, and that's newer and hotter than it was 5 minutes ago. And I click on the top story, and it pulls up, the story. And then if there's video here, I can click on it and watch it. I haven't yet missed the notifications that you're talking about.
Steve, his looks
I'm going to have TweetDeck on here.
Okay, well, I've had a lot of trouble with my unit. It seems I'm not sure. It doesn't have Flash. That's the good news. But it also doesn't have multitasking, and these knobs are cool. But other than that, I'm not impressed.
They just left some features out for the next release.
Well, it's I'm disappointed, I have to tell you. Dan Farber, I held up an Etch-a-Sketch. That was the comedy section of the show.
Where's Dan?
I don't know. I think that blew him away.
I'm here. Did you have a question for me?
Yeah, I was just informing you that I held up an Etch-a-Sketch.
I see. Yeah, well, I mean, you can trace the origins of this device, and I think as we've seen...
Well, they are similar in form factor. This is overlaid on top of this. Mike Arrington had a fabulous construction kit for something that looked like the Crunch Pad on a video that he shot the other day, which I thought was fantastic. But I think from Mike's review of the iPad, I think he's in the same camp as Edo and Robert, which is the laptop's going to go away, at least for plane flights. I mean, I don't know how you can't beat 9 hours or 10 hours, depending on what you're using on the plane.
Yeah, I've had a few arguments with people about the relevance of the device, and all the arguments that seem to mount up against it are people kind of explaining the way they do things today and why this is an inferior device for the way they do things today. And they kind of miss the whole point that this device allows you to do things that you weren't able to do before, not just because of hardware configuration, but because of other things. And that's the interesting discussion. Like if you were to put out a question that's compelling, it would be, I think, what can you do on the iPad in a much better way than you could on the laptop? And there are a lot of things like that, and that's just from looking at the first round of applications available right now in the App Store. There are already a lot of things which, once you use them, you understand that it's a much better way of doing those things than you could do on a laptop. I actually, even the browsing experience feels to me better than my high-end MacBook Pro in terms of speed. But just
Dan Farber,
a lot of
the device is really slick. There's no doubt about it. The lack of a keyboard is going to hamper some people, but there's a Bluetooth option, and at some point in the next few months there will be an attachable keyboard option, so that overcomes that problem. It's really the first generation of what I think we'll see as a whole new array of media consumption devices, where the primary goal is to consume media, and then I think once there's multitasking on the machine, it'll be much easier to do the kinds of things that you want to do in terms of having Twitter at the same time as you have something else.
Mm-hmm.
There's also, for example, a new version of WordPad.
Pages.
What is the blogging stuff? No.
Oh, WordPress.
Yeah.
And so imagine, all these applications are not just cloned for this device, but actually optimized for this device with new kinds of ways to interact and use user interfaces. It is going to be the new platform, but it will take a few years for it to evolve, and there's a big investment in building these applications as well.
The base that's coming from the iPhone is a substantial lead for Apple, I think.
Right, you can run those applications and have them take up the surface area, but they don't do anything new to take advantage of the form factor.
Yeah, I'm not sure I agree with you there. I don't think that I've tried the doubling effect of running an iPhone app on the iPad and quickly went and did something else. It's not a particularly compelling.
Well, my example is you spin up the New York Times, and what you get is the iPhone application. Or you could go to the browser and get just the regular browsing experience. I'm looking for something that goes way beyond that.
Right. Well, my point was that the development environment for the iPhone and for the iPad are similar, and the gestures that are used are similar as well. So I think that developers will have a head start if they already have iPhone apps, but they need to make the transition quickly because so many of the leading apps are already available. Edo, I think, is your speaker still putting out sound?
No, I'm with I'm with earphones.
Okay. Robert, you were saying something?
No, I wasn't saying anything. I'm just trying to download apps as fast as you guys talk about them.
He's very tired.
Have you guys seen
the Guilt?
I'm actually behind a lot of you guys in terms of playing with this thing because I went home and slept. I got two of these things, so I'm loading them up while you guys are talking about various things and remembering what apps people showed me in line this morning.
You guys seen the Guilt app?
Nope. What does that do?
Well, if you're not familiar with Guilt, Guilt is like a member-only e-commerce. It's basically brand names for 70% off because it's a closed system, and it's basically it's a bit like a game because there's a limited inventory. And the reason I raise this example is because it's such a good example of of how things are different. And what you can see is that commerce, the notion of just buying things, e-commerce, is significantly enhanced. The whole experience of buying becomes much more fluid, and in turn, much less friction in terms of people actually spending money. So here I'm looking at shoes and I'm checking it out, and it's like very tactile. So something as primal, I use the word primal in the cyber sense, as going to Amazon and buying things, fundamentally changes on the iPad, which is that's just one example of where it's a much better experience than on a laptop, an iPhone, or a computer, just because of the fact that as humans, we want to touch things, and things are actually also very fast on it. So it's just one anecdote.
Dan Farber, what's the CBS News and in general CBS strategy for the iPad? Are you familiar with it?
Well, we're definitely developing for the platforms. CBS, which would be more the entertainment side of the business, is developing a number of applications for the television programming. For CBS News, we have a application under development at this time. So I think, especially for media companies, this is almost a new lease on life, especially for the newspapers and magazines, where you can really start to see how, over time, this will replace, to a large degree, print, because the user experience is so much better, the economics are so much better, and I think that it's just a matter of time in terms of where the installed base is big enough that it will, kind of support those businesses.
What about the
one other point I might make is it's much easier to throw up a paywall on this device and through the iTunes Store or Amazon or whatever it might be than it is on your own site, because as we all know, the web started off as this great free medium in which we just got into the habit of everything should be free. Now, with these new devices, we're starting to see that people are charging because they feel like they're getting something for their money, even though they would have before. And just imagine the whole experience where you're on some magazine or newspaper or what used to be called a website, and you just videos just pop up everywhere or anywhere, and more information is easily acceptable using the kinds of overlays that we've seen with Silverlight and the Adobe platform, and you can interact with others in new ways. So I think, to me, it's a great reinvention of the user interface that we haven't seen yet that's coming.
Also, the CBS seems to have in recent months, I don't know if this is directly as a result of your being there, but there's a lot more content that, particularly in the news environment, that's going up on the site and is made available for on-demand. It seems to me that this on-demand infrastructure is really the fundamental thing that the iPad will bootstrap and leverage.
Yeah, and I think we're just going to see more sources of rich data that are available through these channels and through search engines. So just imagine this: you're the college student of the future. How do you do a paper? You might just do the paper by assembling all these little bits of data. So, for example, get archived video from World War II or from other places and drop that into a document, so that in the future everybody, whether they know it or not, are building what we call applications today.
The experience that I had, the first app that I downloaded and immediately put on was Netflix. Netflix is extraordinary. I went to a Woody Allen film, which I've never seen, and I've thought about and been unable to convince my children to sit around and watch. It's something with the guy from Curb Your Enthusiasm. I forget his name. Larry David. And instantly.
Well, that was Sonny Gutkowski. Yeah, that was great.
Well, so I'm sitting there, and all of a sudden, I'm instantly, for $9 a month, I'm able to log in and click on a movie and have it appear in incredible definition and color, and
and it looks beautiful.
it's just extraordinary. And
Did you try the ABC app?
not yet, but
Brilliant.
the experience, at the back of your mind, you understand what's going on here, but it's almost a complete. I mean, I hate to say it in these terms, but I will. I mean, it goes back to the RSS is dead phenomenon. This is a streaming environment that is completely, storage is irrelevant at this point. I'm sitting here. I've got a 64 gig iPad, of which I'm using virtually nothing on the machine in terms of the hardware. It's all flowing in real time over a Wi-Fi network in the house. And from what I've been told by people who tried it, I think Stephen Levy commented on this. He did the same thing with Netflix over a 3G connection through a MiFi hookup. I mean, this is just an extraordinary takedown of the concept of networks, and as I think everybody's talking about here, it's not so much that networks are going to be replaced, and the laptop won't be replaced either. It's going to be subsumed into this architecture. This is a reboot of the architecture, not of the way that we do things. Although I think, Edo, you would disagree with that you think that it's also the way we do things that's going to change.
I am certain of it. I think that the whole experience is different. Let me show you another example. Dan mentioned World War II, and this is them plugging the app that we built. Basically,
I'm not hearing you all of a sudden.
Oh, can you hear me now?
Yeah.
This is this is a game. It starts with World War II footage. It's a game where you're an anti-aircraft gunner with kamikaze planes attacking you. But this is an example where we're doing things that you could never do before, because we actually developed a control system for the game that detects the angle that you're holding the iPad and operates the gun in that way. So you literally spin, and it's like a window into an alternative reality. So if I show that to you, just start a game here. It actually looks like newsreel footage, and when you hold it up, if I push it up, I'm pushing the gun up. If I push it down, I'm pushing the gun down. And if I turn around, I'm turning the gun because it has the compass.
Be careful where you point that.
Yeah. So basically, I'm holding a window into an alternative reality that I'm moving like this, and as I move it, I'm moving the gun up and down, or left and right, and spinning in my chair. And the whole notion of augmented reality, we've seen a lot of apps on the iPhone, but that's kind of like looking through a keyhole. Whereas what you have with this in an app like this, Pacific Defense, which is a game, is you're seeing it really big, and therefore you really feel that it's like kind of virtual reality because you're really in it. So you're kind of like have this gateway into a different reality, if you will, and that's a whole new aspect of it that's really fascinating.
I am fascinated by it. I'm trying to also. I'm using a small application on the iPhone.
Yep.
I'm using an application on the iPhone to try and control one of the servers here so that I can see what the comments are coming in. Robert, can you see any of the comments in the chat room?
I'm in friend feed and watching them.
Yeah, just if anybody wants to talk about their reactions to the iPad, please do so there so that Robert can see it.
Michael Sean Wright says you should check out the Time app. It's pretty good.
It is.
So Dan,
it's also fun to use the Kindle. Actually, the Kindle app is
yeah,
really
the Kindle app's
story.
fantastic. My youngest daughter appropriated the Kindle 48 hours ago, she's already read several books, Alice in Wonderland and Through a Glass Darkly, or whatever this the sequel is. Alice in Wonderland 2, I think, is how they called it. And so I was beginning to think that I was going to have to sort of pry that away from her, and then this Kindle app comes out, and it's fantastic.
It's on my screen if you want to.
Yeah, go ahead. I mean, you can show how it works. I read some review that talked about a page turning capability, but I don't see that in the app.
No, it's swiping, but it's pretty. It's functional. It does what it's supposed to do, and different from the iBook store, the content will travel with you on every device as opposed to just being on the iPad. The iPad iBook reader is more sexy in that it has those transitions, but it's still behind in other aspects. Not that it's going to matter, because the ease of purchasing is going to trump everything else. The other deficit that it has is it doesn't benefit from, at least not yet, although it's probably imminent, doesn't benefit from WhisperNet, in that the content does not get pushed to the iPad automatically if you're subscribed to, let's say, the Journal or something else.
So, notification, Edo, is there any kind of push notification that's going to be available for this device?
Well, I think it's going to happen. It's not currently in it, but for them to be able to compete with Kindle, that's one of the areas that they'll need to cover. And luckily for them, it's not a complex problem to solve. They can actually really do that very easily.
Dan Farber, what's the? Are you going to get one?
Yeah, I'll probably get one next round. Wait till there are more applications that I really want to use. And for me, I always have to lug around a laptop anyway, because I need to type a lot. So I could lug around a keyboard and a iPad, because I don't think I could really get used to the on-screen keyboard that well.
But
and I've got two phones, and it's just a lot of gear.
What two phones do you have? A BlackBerry?
I have an iPhone and a BlackBerry.
Right.
But I do think, especially for people who commute or people who enjoy a lot of media, it's a great device. Although if I'm at home, I'd want to be able to take the stuff that I'm downloading to my iPad and watch it on my 46-inch TV.
All right, so I want to shift gears just a little bit to the sort of political outcry on the part of Cory Doctorow and people like that. Has everybody read that
Yes.
Engaged about that? All right, so Dan, what's your take on Cory's criticism?
Well, I don't disagree with his criticism, but the reality is that it seems to work for Apple, and they seem to get away with it, and I don't see that changing in any way.
Is this the thing with the screws?
No, this is the screws.
There were screws.
No screws.
In other words, that you can't do anything to the machine to modify it, and also that you're stuck within Apple's store.
Yeah, there are a lot of people who seem to like being stuck in Apple Store.
And the issue is that, look, if you don't like it, don't buy it, because there are obviously millions of people who don't want to muck with machines and who don't care if Apple rules the world. Maybe
Steve, I apologize. I have to jump off.
Okay, Edo, thanks so much for joining us, and good luck with your app, and we'll see you again soon.
Give it a shot. Tell me how many planes you shot down.
I'll do it.
All right, later.
Take care.
Thanks, guys.
Bye.
Go ahead, Dan. Sorry.
So I'm just saying, that it's a strange noise.
Yeah, Scoble's got lost control of his iPad.
Radiation, and shows you a little bit about how the game is changing over time. It was one of the most hottest games on the iPhone, and having a bigger screen does dramatically change. Let me turn this thing off. Does dramatically change how I interact with it. And I was talking with Bart, the CEO of the company, And he says, now I'm going to be able to play it against other people, holding the iPad like this with my son on the other side, and we can have games or entertainment experiences that are social.
So how do you play with somebody? Is that app a
Their
multiplayer
hands
game?
their hands go on that side,
Oh,
and
I see.
my hands go here, and we can be tapping on the screen and playing against each other, or moving chess pieces. So their chessboard is over here, and my chessboard is here, and I can drag, things around.
Uh, Dan was interrupted there. Dan, you want to just finish your thought?
No, but I think I was just saying that for some people, the closed system is an anathema, and for others, and for many millions of people, it's just fine.
Well, the thing that I kind of find a little odd, well, I don't find it a little odd. I think it's just dead wrong, is the idea, the sort of paternalistic idea that, I think he makes many good points, but then he tells us why we shouldn't be using it. And it just seems so absurd.
Now, the point, I think the point is Steve Jobs has always tried to build appliances. And appliances are things that you don't necessarily get into the innards and play around with.
But who is he speaking to? Is he speaking to the people who enjoy these kinds of products and find them compelling and addictive? Because I think he's wasting his time trying to tell somebody essentially that they're not hip enough to be able to understand how they shouldn't be using the thing. I mean, it seems absurd.
Well, it's a certain philosophy, and I'm not going to argue with it. I'm just saying that the reality is that's not the way that Apple does business.
Right. So the other part of his argument, I think, is more interesting, which is that he thinks that the so-called open methodologies and strategies of a company like Google are going to come along. I think Doc Searls also agrees with this scenario, that open technologies will inevitably overtake Apple. I don't agree with this either, not in terms of my objections to the first part, but I just don't think that.
Well, we haven't seen it so far. Apple's notion of open is to have Verizon also sell the iPhone and whatever else. That's their notion of open, and I don't think that's necessarily going to change.
Well, I think actually,
I think.
Go ahead. Sorry.
You look at. No, I'm just saying. You look at what people really care about. Do they care that the television systems on the airplanes run Linux or not?
Yeah, but I think there's a different argument that he's making, which is that, or I know Doc Searls is making that argument, which is that the things that you can't do eventually start to overtake the ubiquity of the initial platform, and at some point the platform becomes one of several players.
I think that's very true, and you can relate that to history, where dynasties at some point become so insular that they fall, but we're not there yet.
Well, I think there's a counterweight to that, which is that what Apple does in terms of harnessing open source, which I think is actually quite similar to what Google does. WebKit is the underpinning of both of their platform strategies in terms of browsing, and HTML5 I think is also being supported by both of these companies. So I think that Apple is insulating themselves. What I think they do is that they break out of ahead of the pack by getting their under a controlled environment, and then over time, as their competitors try and catch up to them, then they unbundle or unlock the various services, or enough of the various services to make it essentially an identical experience, while at the same time they've got such a huge lead in terms of the App Store that they continue to be incredibly profitable. So I just don't see how this is going to fail on either an economic or the reaction of the user. And I think that developers are going to go where the money is as well. Robert, any thoughts?
I just was reading some of the chat room comments and trying to catch up with things. I totally disagree with Cory Doctorow. I liken it to the time when we moved from carburetors to fuel injection. The carburetor cars were easier to work on. I used to take apart my carburetor in high school and rebuild it, and I understood what it did. When fuel injection came along, it was a system that I really couldn't touch. I couldn't get inside. It moved to computer control pretty quickly. I mean, my new Prius, I don't even dare touch it unless I'm a computer hacker. And that's a totally different skill than, shaving something off on your inside your carburetor to change the fuel mixture. And so we are moving from a carburetor age of computers to a fuel injected one, and that bums out the people who built a lot of skills in the carburetor age. But it excites me because it brings more people into this world.
All right, Dan, any last... Go ahead.
I've got to sign off.
Yes, so any last thoughts before we go?
Well, I think it's going to be fun. We have a new platform, and let's see what people can build on it and how people adopt it.
Well, I appreciate you showing up, and please keep us informed about what you're doing in terms of CBS and your application as to when that's going to hit the iPad.
Will do. Talk to you guys later.
Thanks. And Robert, any last
Charles.
thoughts from you?
You're trying to get me to go really last thoughts. I think when you get your hands on it, it changes your idea of what this form factor could be. I worked at NEC selling tablet PCs, and we had a tablet that looked a lot like this, back in 2002. But unlike this is $500. The NEC back then was $2,000. And the software on this is just really smooth and feels good, and you touch it and it reacts to you well. The Windows software that was running on the earlier tablet PCs just wasn't well thought out like this, and it wasn't deep. Everything I've done so far deep into the apps feels good, and that wasn't true in the Windows world. And of course, that means I don't have Windows Office on here. And that, I think that was done on purpose to keep some of the crappy software that people have written for, and it's not really even necessarily crappy. It was designed for an earlier age, and this is a new age of computing. And it's really interesting. I was at a major computer company the other day, and I was met with somebody, and he was an older gentleman, and he wanted to show me a video he had done. And he started using his mouse and started poking through the file system. And he was a little lost because he had a very extensive file system that he built over, more than 10 years of using Windows. And he had lots of folders and lots of complexity. And it took him several minutes to remember which folder he had stuck this video in. And I compare that to the kid I met in line who wrote Chat Roulette. 17-year-old kid from Moscow, and I watched how he worked, and he never used the file system. He used Google, and he used Gmail, and he used web apps, and he searched for things. So he was taking me on a tour of the web, but he was using the search interface to do the same action that this other gentleman was trying to do, but he was much more productive at it. And I think that's what this thing is going to bring. It's going to bring a new age of computing to people, and that's what's exciting about it. I'm going to hand this to my mother-in-law when she gets home in an hour, and put a Farsi newsletter on it. She doesn't read email. She's never used a computer, but I bet she takes to this because the act of touching it is more akin to paper. And it'll be very interesting to see if she gets excited about this world.
So my teenager came home today from wherever she's been since she got her driver's license, which is anywhere but here. And she sat down at the table and she said, "What's that?" And then she said, "Oh, that's so pointless. I mean, you just always want to have these kinds of toys." And I said, "Okay, well, that's good because you're not getting one." And she said, "Well, let me look at it for a second." I said, "No way." Eventually, of course, she started looking at it. She played with it for maybe 30 seconds, and she said, "I want one." She was completely transformed. I mean, it was and you could see, to your point, how she used the onboard, the visual keyboard, and she went to Facebook, and of course, she couldn't get to the IM. She did a debugging of some of the issues that I've sort of alluded to in about 30 seconds. Well, that doesn't work. That doesn't work. Well, it'll be interesting to see how Facebook comes to this party, for example, because what they've done with the onboarding of services, particularly IM, is created this sort of living desktop metaphor that is somewhat broken by this initial version of the application. So it'll be interesting to see how they solve that problem and how quickly it occurs. My feeling is that I looked at the great friend feed application. I know you don't use that anymore, Robert.
Yeah.
But friend feed updates in real time just fine on the iPad. And those applications which basically provide in an HTML experience the kind of console effect that I think we're all looking for, and integrate email and micro messages and IM, are going to be very successful on this. So I think that's going to be the battleground in the next few months, or maybe even just weeks. We'll see what happens. I was interested. Click on it. Is that a video down there, or that's no. See if you can find a video. I had an email. Is that a video?
Yeah.
Okay, now click on that.
Yeah.
Now this, I think, is something new. That's playing in line.
Yeah. That's last week's Gillmor Gang.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
but
by the way, you can make it full screen really easily.
And welcome back. This is
Hey, look at that.
Gillmor, and this is the Gillmor Gang for Friday.
excellent.
Oh my God.
All right, let's multitask here. This is Steve Gillmor. This has been the Gillmor Gang. I want to thank Dan Farber. I want to thank Edo Segal. And, of course, Robert Scoble, who, once again, was the first guy out of the Palo Alto store. There's a famous picture of that, which I'm surprised you haven't got racked up here.
Yeah, I do actually. Hold on a
All
second.
right, well, while you're doing that, and finding it, I want to thank Rackspace, and particularly Rob Legess, without whom this show would not exist in this form. And speaking of this form, the fabulous people of NewTek and their incredible TriCaster, which is one of the amazing tools that are allowing us to be able to take this revolution forward. And this is what it looks like when you're first online, courtesy of staying up all night, going into the store. So I want to thank Steve Jobs, and I want to thank everyone else who showed up, and especially those who didn't. This is the Gillmor Gang. We'll see you again next time.
Look at all this
Bye-bye.
iPad. Bye-bye.